Hello, everyone. Welcome back for this new episode of Coding Design System. And this episode is the last one of the season. So we're going to wrap it after this one. And we will meet again in August. And to conclude this season, I'm more than happy to have Brad Frost on the show with me. Hey, Brad, how are you?
Hi, good. Thanks so much for having me. This is an honor.
Thanks for accepting the invitation. It's an honor for me to have you on stream with me. It's really great. So let me, I don't know, introduce yourself. You're more than famous for a lot of things, inventing a lot of concepts in the past, and we're gonna discuss about it in a bit. But do you want to add some few words about what you are doing right now and the project you are working on, things like that?
That's a big question. Yeah, I'm a design system consultant, front end developer, author, writer, whatever, speaker, whatever you want to say. But what I'm up to is difficult to describe. But basically, I largely involves helping build design systems with clients, but also sort of helping coach and train and guide on some of the technical aspects of design systems and a lot of the not technical aspects of design systems, a lot of the people and the process and the culture and the organization and the governance and all that good stuff. So that's a lot of what I get up to in my normal professional life.
Great. You're working on this particular aspect of I don't know, organizing systems for a while right now, because you invented the concept of atomic design something like what, 10 years ago, I guess, something like that.
Coming out, yeah, 9 years ago. Basically, we've been putting it into practice since January of 2013. So coming up on
No,
coming up on 10 years. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, time flies.
Yeah.
To me, it was something that totally blew my mind, because I'm a former biologist, so I'm coming absolutely not from the technical side of the web and system and development and so on. So when you finally came up with this concept of atomic design, I was just, oh man, but this is exactly how nature works. This is totally organic approach
Yeah.
of, you know, the systems and how it works and so on. So it was
Yep.
just the right way to do so. When I finally dive into the concept, it was just incredible. But yeah, 10 years ago. So right now we are a bit more advanced in terms of organizing our systems and our architectures and so on. So my first question is probably this one: what is your conclusion after 10 years working on from atomic design to design system right now, and architecturing and organizing systems? What are your conclusion? How far we come since the invention of atomic design?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And reflecting back on the last close to decade of this field, it just even, the term design system wasn't really a thing in 2013. By the time I wrote the book in 2015, it was kind of towards the tail end of my authoring experience that like this kind of term design systems as a more of a formal concept, as a piece of language kind of started to emerge. And so kind of was able to kind of weave it into my writing. But it's funny, revisiting the language. There was a lot of talk about, pattern libraries and style guides and things like that. And that kind of grew. And just so the last 10 years has been quite the journey of just kind of language and things being established along the way. Terms like design tokens and sort of getting into a lot of the, we'll say, subsystems of design systems as well. There's been a lot of like firming up of a lot of these kind of concepts that the community has done a great job of sort of putting words to things that have been sort of flying around. But as for atomic design itself, I all these years later, I actually find it to be, continue to find it to be super helpful, um, for a number of reasons. Like the specific language doesn't matter so much. So it's like, atoms, molecules, organisms, templates, and pages, like those sort of like discrete steps, or like the specific language around them doesn't matter so much as more the sort of concept of like your biology days, of these like sort of nested systems, or these things that grow in increased sort of complexity. And that's always my main sort of gist with atomic design, is it's like to be able to sort of take the most basic building block of a UI, like a checkbox atom or something, and to be able to put that into a molecule that's like a checkbox field, and then to sort of have an organism that is a form kind of component with a checkbox field in it, and then to ultimately put that into the context of a real product, like a checkout flow or something like that, for an e-commerce website. That concept still is incredibly, I think, powerful and useful. One of the biggest things I see in all of my work is many teams and many organizations have sort of understood the need for design systems, but they kind of fall into this trap oftentimes of kind of building it off to the side and building these sort of components and building a component library, but they don't really kind of create the connection, the true connection between the design systems components and the products that those components serve. And that's why, like all these years later, that kind of creating this sort of feedback loop by creating this sort of tie between the actual products and the underlying design system, to be able to sort of draw a straight line between those is really valuable and really important. So that's why all these years later, even if like the people get kind of tripped up about the language, the specific terms or the labels, it's more about the sort of mental model. It's more about the sort of concept than it is about the sort of specific language. So yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting because I guess that one of the most painful point in working with design system right now as a team, from design parts or developers side or whatever, is that communication is hard, and helping people to work together around those different kind of system, especially when they are not sharing the same language. I mean, designers don't speak the same language as developers and so on. So you have to find a
Yeah.
way to help them to communicate and so on. And design system should be the right tool to do so. But
Yes.
I don't know what is your experience right now as a design system consultant to help people and empower them in a way to share their feedbacks and communicate. As you said, having this loop system helping them to work together and to improve, and not just have a design system that is just imploding at some point because nobody really cares or nobody really know how to use it or how to work on it or work with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the biggest pain points that we encounter is designers and developers not talking to one another. And the promise of design systems is like, here's this area, here's this arena that sort of bridges the gap between these two worlds. And it's beautiful when it actually happens. But a lot of times, like in my work, we tend to see very sort of strong silos between these worlds. And sometimes design systems help, but a lot of times a design system is either born of one group or another. Maybe it's the design group that has sort of started the design system initiative, and they're the ones that kind of are the owners of it. And then other times it's the engineers or the developers that are the owners of it. And so you end up in these sort of weird sort of battles where there's still this kind of tension in between them. And one of the things that we do a lot in our work is to like really show how designers and developers should be working together in real time and like actually getting on a call like this to actually sort of hash through in working sessions. I think that like designers and developers often like try to stay in their own worlds, and then we'll try to like lob things over in the form of, you know, a Zeppelin link or Figma link or a Jira ticket or sort of something. And they like kind of want to like stay apart. And I think that like really the opportunity with kind of creating a design system is like, here's this place where the designers and the sort of front end developers are able to sort of truly come together to collaborate to build this product, to build this UI product, and that is going to be consumed by other teams. So what's really cool is that there's this opportunity to facilitate and foster this collaboration between the worlds of design and development. And the product of that collaboration is this sort of reusable set of components that other teams who might have still that very sort of clear separation between design and development, they might sort of carry on like that, but they're able to consume this thing that sort of encapsulates and embraces and embodies all of these best practices, the brand best practices, the UX best practices, the front end best practices, the accessibility best practices, the responsive design best practices. All of that stuff is able to be sort of baked in as much as possible into this sort of tool, into this library that other teams can benefit from. So it's cool. It's cool. It's a lot of fun to kind of work and help coach and train teams to actually communicate with one another better and to collaborate with one another more. And it's like, these are, for a lot of places, these are not muscles that people are used to exercising. so I really enjoy kind of coming in and going, here's how you talk to each other. So.
Yeah, it's probably the most difficult part, you know. Humans, people, working with
That's
people. I mean, we all have our own sensibility and our own specificities. So finding a way to help people to work together is often something really, really complex. And so for you, what is the future in the field of design systems? Because you almost defined the language and the grammar around how to design, how to structure a system. So what is missing right now to help people better work together? Is this a problem of tooling? Is this a problem of I don't know, finding the right way to communicate? You mentioned design tokens, which is already a great way to just carry information between designs and development part. But yeah, what is missing right now for you in this field of design systems?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, you know, it's easy to go to tools just because it's kind of obvious, and there's always room for improvement, and there are like, I'll say that there are improvements for tooling that could go a long way. So in the world of design tokens specifically, that sort of true connection between design and development, many places and people are attempting to sort of bridge this gap and kind of automate the gap in between design and development, and to be able to say, oh, in our Figma library, we define our color palette, we define our border radius values, we define our sort of type scale, we define all of this stuff, and that will just sort of automatically sort of show up in code, or vice versa, right? So there's absolutely and there's a lot of people sort of working on this in various capacities. Is like, some are honest to God startups, and other people are just like I had a call last week actually with the people who are like, oh, we're working on this thing that it's a lot of people are doing it, and we see it on our sort of teams as well. I see why it's attractive, and there is like a real, I think, utility to it. my issue with initiatives like that is it's often thought of as like a solution to a human problem, which is there's a gap between design and development. And even if the tooling was there to just totally like orchestrate everyone and have them in sync, there's still a gap. There's still like, I don't want to talk to these people and I don't want to talk to these people. And so that's where there really is no substitute for just like closer communication and collaboration. So all that's to say is I do think that there's an opportunity for this tooling to happen. I welcome it. There have been some like really good sort of cracks at it. I think that sort of solving it in my work, sort of ducking my head into many, many different organizations of all different shapes and sizes, tech stacks and tooling systems and things like that, design tools. It's hard to get right in a way that sort of works and solves the problem kind of for everyone. Most of the sort of solutions that I see are like, if you use this exact way of styling your components, and if you use this exact tool and use these exact plugins and stand on one foot and twirl around, then like you can make it work. And that always sort of feels a little weird to me because you're kind of creating this dependency in order to kind of bridge these gaps, and then you can't necessarily migrate to different tools or sort of adopt different technology because not because it's good for the user, but because you're like, oh well, we've invested all this time to like sort of make all this work together. So I get worried that some of these solutions kind of paint you into a corner. So anyways, that's tooling. I think that there's opportunity there. I'm looking forward to it. I think another big thing that I see that's happening now, but I think will continue to happen, is the adoption of web components as kind of a framework agnostic or library agnostic way to create design systems that are able to sort of go to more places. We've been building web component based design systems for the last number of years. In the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen like a lot of maturity happen in that world, which is really exciting. And I think that we're kind of getting to a place where this is starting to feel pretty good, meaning that like we don't necessarily like have to be building say a React-based component library, and then in another pocket of the organization we need to be building an Angular flavor of that same component library. Because at the end of the day, users don't care if like the homepage is built in Drupal and the blog is in WordPress and the checkout is a single page React application. And like it's the sort of experience, it's like the UI consistency and cohesion that really matters. So I'm excited that sort of web components has kind of grown up a bit and can kind of truly power a lot of these experiences. And because it's part of the web, I kind of feel good about its prospects over the long term. So those are kind of two areas I think that are really exciting and future leaning.
Yeah, it's great to hear you saying that, because it's my vision. So for sure, I do agree with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great to see that right now the web ecosystem is mature enough to be able to handle the real complexity of building complex web apps and complex design system ready to power front-end applications by using standards like web components for your components, or good old CSS for all your CSS matters, and so on. We talked in a previous episode about style queries that are coming, which is definitely a really good way technically to handle the theme issues that you will encounter in different implementations of your design systems. And it's great to see that web components, to illustrate that, is definitely a great future to do so. In a previous episode, I made a simple theme switcher, like dark mode theme switch, and I did it in a web component format, and I added it directly into one of our starter kit in Backlight. So just to give you the context, I'm working at DevRiots, and DevRiots is working in the design system area of tooling and so on. So we're doing different tools like Backlight, which is a design system-oriented editor, and we've got a few starter kits to help you start your design system with your favorite technologies. And I just added in the documentation layout of an Nunjack starter kit as a simple implementation of the theme switcher. And this is just adding just a simple HTML component by just importing in from CDN and plug it into your page. And it supports CSS theming using CSS custom properties for different parts and so on. And it's really easy to do so. So yeah, to me, it's definitely the right way to think technically the design system part. But tooling is not the answer to all the issues and all the problem, and it won't solve the communication problem between people if people don't want to talk together. So
right. And it is 100% true. It's like all of this stuff is totally possible, but it really does have a lot to do with people's willingness to sort of get on the same page. And again, tooling can help in this world, and I think that there is like a lot to be said for it. It's like if we're talking tokens, being able to like visualize those and have those sort of flow into their respective environments makes a lot of sense, to just be able to sort of have sophisticated conversations about sophisticated concepts. But at the end of the day, it's like, the tech is here to be able to do this, and it's actually quite easy when like after it's all said and done. It's like, oh, you're like literally just swapping out a couple CSS custom property values in a media query that says prefers color scheme dark, and then you just go, oh, I'm gonna set this to black and I'm gonna set this to white, and then you're good. That's maybe too simplistic, but like it truly is like attainable. Like this isn't some like pie in the sky thing. It's like, oh, that's actually like not that hard of a problem to solve. It's just more a matter of like being in the position to be able to do that. I ran a workshop last week where I was asking the attendees if they, in their design systems, supported like kind of proper dark mode, and no one raised their hand. And I think that's like it's an interesting thing that I kind of like pick at certain things or trends like that, and I'm like, is this a trend? Is this something that is like fast forward 5 years and we're all going to have dark mode support for it? Or is it like a trend of just going, yeah, like maybe, like, or maybe it's more of like a operating system level kind of thing that just kind of takes care of it kind of for us. I don't know the answers to it, but it's kind of fun. Like whenever you sort of think about things like dark mode, it could be seen as an enhancement. And where I see most teams is they're still kind of getting the thing off the ground for the first time, right? They're still like in the, sort of getting it stood up, getting good component coverage, getting to a certain level of maturity. Once you achieve that maturity, then you're able to start adding other sort of, enhancements and cool stuff on top of it. So it's I like stuff like that, whether it's dark mode or just kind of other like sort of niceties or like things that we think are cool but are like a little bit more, I don't know, maybe this is like nice to have, maybe this is an enhancement, maybe this isn't like as important as like getting the button component down or something like that. So
do you think we over engineer things when we start working with design system? Because this theme thing, which is which start with light mode and dark mode, but we could easily have some kind of variation for a purple theme or a pinky one, or I don't know. It's supposed to be the heart of a design system, being able to easily adapt different part of your brands to reflect the real personality of your brand and what it is, colors, fonts, and so on. But are we overthinking things when we are working on a design system? What do you think about it?
I mean, very often we're overthinking many things. So yes, but what you're sort of alluding to is like what I kind of call like themable design systems. I pasted in the chat a blog post. But we've been working with a lot of different clients over the last number of years to be able to support, you know, dozens or even hundreds of brands using the same design system. So using the same bones, but then flowing different sort of brand aesthetics and looks and feel sort of through it. So we've done this with Condé Nast and Marriott Hotels and Pfizer and like a bunch of places that have many different brands under their umbrella or under their sort of portfolio. And what the idea is, the promise of design systems is that a button is a button is a button, a card is a card is a card is a card, and you should be able to sort of share the same basic structure and the same basic sort of behavior. For instance, like an accordion should open and close, right? A modal should open and close, right? You should be able to switch tabs and stuff. But like one brand's tabs might need to look different than another brand's tabs. So this is 100% like a real, this is an overthinking kind of thing. A lot of times, the way I tend to define a design system is the official story of how an organization designs and builds digital interfaces. And for certain organizations that need to support different looks and feels, then that absolutely becomes part of the architecture. Now it could be, and there's like different flavors of this. I have another blog post that I'm hoping to publish soon. It's like there's different flavors of why you would need kinds of flexibility, aesthetic flexibility. Could be supporting different brands, could be supporting sub brands of like a main brand, but you have kind of overrides. It could be like white labeling. I've like worked with clients that like kind of sell their software and then they kind of are able to skin it to a degree. There's things like, this is a big one that always sort of comes up where like one part of the brand or one part of the organization needs to support more like marketing experiences. So like big chunky heroes and cards and blocks and like big kind of fat typography and all that stuff. And then they also have software that's like a lot more utilitarian. So like, you know, data tables and forms and like all of that stuff. And it's like, can you support both of those use cases using the same design system? And you can, and sort of creating different themes for those can go a long way for achieving that. So anyways, all that's to say is, and then of course like light mode and dark mode and like all of that stuff sort of factors in there. So there's a lot of reasons why, in order to sort of really meet the needs of the organization and the organization's users that they're serving, you need to have like a level of flexibility or customization or themability baked into the design system. Very rarely do we build a design system that just is like supporting one product that has one look and feel. Increasingly, as we sort of go big and work with a lot of big organizations, you have many different types of applications, many different looks and feels, many different brands, many different sort of things that all require a lot of flexibility to be sort of architected into the design systems. And that's a lot of fun. And it doesn't feel like we're overthinking it. Like a lot of times we do want to sort of impose constraint, and like I'm sure you've experienced this too. It's like there's the difference between kind of intentional deviation, meaning like, oh, this button looks different than this button, and there's good reason for it, versus unintentional deviation, which is this button doesn't look like the other buttons, and there's not really a good reason
Mm.
why that happens. So that's I think the art of design systems is trying to sort of rein in the sort of unintentional design differences or sort of code differences. It doesn't have to just be aesthetics, but like sometimes things are the same but different, and you want them to be the same. But then other times things are different and there's good reason for it, in which case you want the system to be able to accommodate those differences.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And to me, this is exactly why themable component library is not a design system. It's a great tool to help you to sustain your design system and build what you want. It gives you this flexibility and this customization level that you may expect at some point, but it's not the same thing than a design system. It's just a bunch of, I don't know, inert components, something that have to be plugged into something more organic that is defined by the design system structure.
Yeah, I mean it's like we tend to talk about, it's like subsystems of a design system, and it's like that. It's like the token system is a subsystem of the overarching design system. It's like there's many pieces of the design system puzzle, including a lot of the sort of, as you sort of saying earlier, like the human parts of it, the sort of like process, the governance process, the adoption process, the contribution process, all of that good stuff. So it's like there's a lot to it. And again, like kind of coming back to your first question, is like 9 years ago, our language wasn't as sophisticated because a lot of these things were still being sort of tested out and being born and stuff. So it's fun to like help have more nuanced language to be able to sort of describe the relationship of some of these things. So
yeah, it's fun because I don't know, something like 10 or 15 years ago, someone asked me, okay, why are you working on web front end? Why is it so exciting? And I just answered, because this is the Far West, we're just building cities and putting the rails, and we are trying to go the far from here, and we are trying to do so much new things that weren't done before. And yeah, right now this is still the same thing. We changed our focus, but we are still working on improving things and improving process, and yeah, saying the evolution from atomic design to design system right now, it's just so exciting.
Yeah, it really is. It's like we are on. It is still, even though we've been at it for a while, it still is the Wild West, and like we'll look back on it in another 10 years and go, can you believe that we used to think about this? Can you believe we were talking about design tokens?
There was that war on which format to support design tokens and how to use them, and now it's a standard and nobody cares about it, and yeah, who knows?
It's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, responsive design is another, I think, good look. It's like at the time, and that was like kind of a lot of how I kind of came up through things, was sort of working on these like kind of mobile specific websites before responsive design was a thing. And then it's like for a good number of years it was like, oh, how are you going to solve these problems? Very interesting. And now it's almost like just this total afterthought. And I don't, it's not that it's not important, it's just kind of become sort of part of we've internalized it as an industry. And I feel like design systems are also part of that, and I think that we're sort of getting there with that. I think the big difference, or not, it's not different, but still touches on those more sort of human aspects of things, where it's like with responsive design that totally disrupted the traditional design and developer workflow and really sort of like shed some light on, some opportunities to sort of get better and collaborate and communicate more closely together. And I think that design systems, especially as you're sort of talking about serving an entire organization and how they build products, is like we're really it's a from a technical and a design standpoint, it's kind of almost a commodity, meaning you got buttons, you got tabs, you can find those the internet over. That's not the hard part. The hard part is aligning and orchestrating and sort of creating a culture of collaboration and connectivity across an organization. So those human systems are hard, and that's why I like the work that I do, but it's also why it's like maybe design systems I don't think will be a solved problem as easily as sort of adopting a new CSS grid, or just like pick any sort of technology or any new sort of like tool or CSS feature or something like that. As cool as those are like one of those things where it's like all you need to do is get developers to adopt them for the most part, and then that's the end of the game. With design systems at like a human level, you're talking about coordinating a lot of different stakeholders and groups of people and trying to get cats and dogs to play nicely together. So
yeah, because it's a switch of a mental model. It's a new way to consider, to imagine, to figure out front end UIs and how things should be working together. And this is, to me, it's one of the most exciting parts of the design system, is the ability to solve directly at the component level the different parts of the complexity. You mentioned the responsive design, but we will also have complexity coming from bandwidth, connection, batteries, issues, I don't know, GPU capabilities of your different devices, and so on. And solving those problems at the application level, it's just nightmare. But solving them at the component level inside the design system, so you're just serving to your teammates things that are ready to be plugged into the final application to build. Just in the, to me, it's in the atomic design vision, it's the templates and pages part, and you're now giving to your other people a way to implement those templates and those pages the right way without having to worry about underlying complexity and so on. But it's it needs that everyone is able to switch the mental model and to consider how to build things differently. And it's not always that easy to move. And accessibility, we mentioned accessibility in this chat, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's these things do provide this again, just kind of more nuanced way of sort of like considering it. Like you're able to, in the past, pre-design systems, it was like our site's slow, and it's like, well, what's causing that? And then you'd have to like kind of unravel the big ball of yarn. With design systems and this ability to sort of create these sort of components, but also to compose whole pages and flows in kind of this sort of standalone UI specific way, what you are able to do is have this sort of like standalone environment that basically says, is this an issue over here? Is this a problem specific to the UI? Or is this some backend system or slow API endpoint, or somebody wrote some bad like business logic somewhere or something? So it's like, what I love about design systems in general, as someone who specializes in UI code and what I kind of call front end web development, which is just like focusing on that sort of HTML, CSS, presentational JavaScript, I love how it kind of creates more sort of deliberate and explicit swim lanes and roles and responsibilities, where it's like before is just kind of like all code, do Brad, you do the code. And it's like, well, there's many different kinds of code. And like, I do this type of code. I don't do this other kind of code. And a lot of people have a different sort of makeup of their sort of, respective sort of areas of interest and expertise. And I love that. I love that sort of design systems, in my view, has sort of like created a home base for people who specialize in a certain kind of work, in a certain kind of code work, especially, that sort of helps differentiate, but also kind of creates this like really healthy division of labor, separation of concerns, and kind of handshake between sort of the sort of more like sort of back of the front end stuff, like the GraphQL stuff and CRUD stuff and all that stuff. All of that's very, very important, and so is the UI. So that's I've had a lot of fun kind of helping, I think, be a part of some of those conversations to just kind of help people better understand that distinction. And it does open the door to a lot of, I think, just more nuance, just like, oh yeah, it's not all just code. Especially I'm sure you experienced this. It's like from the outside looking in, people who don't code, they're like, oh yeah, you could just do it all, and by the way, fix the router or fix the printer. And it's like, no, there's many different types of code, and UI code is one of them. So
yeah, definitely. I in a previous company, I was working specifically on the interface of different kind of application running in the browser, and I defined my job as UI developer, because it was exactly what I did. Just presentational JavaScript and HTML, semantics, CSS, styling, and that's all. And the rest wasn't my specialty. So no need to say that I was a full stack developer. I don't know where I've got this specific part of working on the design of the interface, and it's great. I've got a question in the chat from Thais, and I drop it here. It's what's the most complex component you've come across? Something that is complex for both developers and designers.
Tables.
Yeah. Been there, done that.
To pick one, I like, as far as like where you like can go with it. We're working with a client right now. They have sort of an existing Angular based design system. They have another one in React, and we're sort of helping sort of create a web component library. And we're sort of like gathering the requirements from all of their existing sort of tables. And it's just, there's a lot you could do there. Sortable headers and draggable table rows and expandable table rows and alphabetize. You click on a header and it alphabetizes them. And it's like, it gets funky because it's like some of these things are very specific to what's inside of the tables, for instance. So it's like, there's certain ones that are just kind of content agnostic, where it's just like, yeah, here's a text passage. You could just put arbitrary text in there. It doesn't really matter. It's fine. Some of these with tables, it's like very dependent on the content that's going inside of them. So that's one that comes to mind. I think that there's other ones though too. We tend to sort of increasingly sort of define these sort of different, almost like a layer cake of kind of thinking about design systems. And there's kind of like the token layer as like kind of a foundations layer. There's the core UI components like your buttons, your cards, your form controls, the things that you would see in any design system. And then sort of sitting on top of that is kind of more composed things, like things that are usually like organisms in atomic design speak, but more complex and product specific things. So for instance, like we were just working with a retailer, they had like a whole sort of filter toolbar for their product listing page. So you can filter by brand and price and sort by rating and like all this stuff. There's like drawers flying out. There's all of this stuff. So and all of it's built on the design system components and foundations, but like this kind of complex piece of user interface that's very product specific kind of lives at what I kind of call a recipe. It's the kind of like this, it's taking the design system ingredients and then sort of building this like sort of specific like recipe from it. And just like drop the link to the article in the chat. But it's like so there's like kind of complexity that we tend to see at this sort of recipe level. But as far as like complex design system components, I'd say that tables are especially can get really gnarly really quickly. So
Okay, yeah, for sure. Those ones are not the easiest ones. I've got one final question, just for fun, but which comes first for you, design or code?
It's both, it's, I mean, like, I really think that this is so much of the problems emerge when design comes first. Now, that's not to say that it's like, well, it needs to be both. And one of the biggest things that I fought for my whole career as someone who's always been sort of downstream of the design process, and then you sort of get these things given to you and you're like, this sucks, this isn't good, like, why, this wasn't well considered, they don't know that what's possible or not possible in the medium that is the web. So all this to say is I think that there's like a real opportunity to sort of bring developers and people who know code very intimately into the design process, and that will help everyone design good solutions. So it's really not like an either or, it really is a both and. Like, you have people with a certain bent to them, people that see things in terms of color and typography and texture and like sort of brand and look and feel, and those are amazing people to work with. And then there's people that see things through the lens of user experience and personas and optimal sort of flows and like sort of like layout and what's like good from a psychological, it's just kind of cognitive sort of level, and that's great. And then you have people that come at it from what's the technical possibilities or constraints of this medium, right? Things like interactivity, things like performance, things like, there's a lot of like invisible areas that only kind of emerged whenever you sort of plug things into code. And the more you're able to sort of get all of those people that all bring their own sort of skill set to the table, and you put them together and treat them as equals and equal participants in something, and to, especially if you're able to sort of get them in a room or on a call together to like workshop through a problem, you're going to arrive at more sound solutions than if the UX person were to just kind of go off on their own without the input of the visual person or the code person, or the visual person goes away and doesn't take into account the UX sort of considerations or the code considerations or technical considerations. So it really is this like the sum of all of these people, working together is far greater than if everyone's doing their things independently. So that's really all it comes down to, is just, again, talking with people, working with other people, and like prioritizing collaboration over process.
Yeah,
it really is like that. The irony is, for as much as agile has taken off and has become just integrated into every organization, so few people truly, genuinely practice agile as is like stated in the Agile Manifesto. It's like, when we talk about like working software over comprehensive documentation, what we're saying is, let's actually spend time building this thing, building software rather than pictures of software. When we talk about like, actually sort of collaborating versus just writing a bunch of things down and throwing things at each other, it's like that's truly practicing agile, is like actually working together. And I think that it's ironic that this whole big infrastructure and just juggernaut of process and Kanban boards and all of this like kind of crap kind of gets in the way oftentimes of like just people getting together and working together. So it's like I think that there's just so much opportunity to just work with your peers and to insist upon it. It's like so many times in our work, it's like we kind of have to. That's a lot of what we model as we go. Let us show you how you could work. And like all of the pain that comes with the red lines and the back and forth and the requirements and all this crap just goes away, because whenever you're just able to talk with one another and like connect at a real human level, so many good things happen. But we don't it is kind of tragic that doesn't happen. It's like it's not the norm. It should be the norm. It should be the overwhelming norm at anyone's work, is just like, yeah, you get together and you hash things out with your teammates, but instead it's just this like chopped up assembly line, Jira tickets, and it's a lot of that just gets in the way of people doing good work together.
Yeah. I when I worked as a consultant, I often say that 50% of my work was politics, just helping people to talk together. Just go to the same room and discuss your issues together, rather than just throwing shit together. It shows us like monkeys. Yeah, I mean, we're humans. We can easily just discuss and find solutions to the problems together.
Absolutely.
We're touching the end of the session. So is there anything that you want to add before we wrap it?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe in the spirit of what we were just talking about, is just I encourage everyone to just kind of, be good human beings and, treat each other well, and it makes everyone's lives better and makes your experience go smoother and makes your colleagues and teammates and whatever their experience go better. So just really focus at that sort of that human level and find ways to be kind to each other and be collaborative versus becoming entrenched in your own kind of ideas and stuff. Just really fight those tendencies and really work towards just kind of being a good partner to the people around you.
Yeah, I do agree with you. Thanks a lot again for being with me today. It was really great to have this discussion with you. This is, as I said, the last episode for the season. So we're going to meet again in August for season 2, starting with Jeremy Keith. So I'm really exciting for this one too. It's gonna be awesome. And in the meanwhile, we had a lot of great guests and great discussions and demos. So go back to see the replays, and see you in August, folks. And thanks again, Brad, for being with me today. Bye bye, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks so much.